The morning sun shone brightly over the small town of Millfield, Connecticut. It was the kind of place where everyone knew their neighbors and children rode bikes safely down tree-lined streets. In this peaceful town lived Rebecca Martinez, a 28-year-old woman who seemed to have everything going right in her life. Rebecca worked as a pediatric nurse at Millfield General Hospital. Every day she walked through the hospital doors with a smile that could brighten anyone's mood. The children loved her gentle voice and kind eyes. Her co-workers often said Rebecca had a gift for making sick children feel better just by being in the room. She lived in a small apartment on Maple Street, just 10 minutes from the hospital. The apartment was filled with plants, family photos, and medical journals. Rebecca loved reading about new ways to help children heal. She had been working at the hospital for 5 years and had never missed a single day of work. Rebecca came from a close family. Her mother, Maria Martinez, had raised Rebecca and her younger sister, Emma, alone after their father died when Rebecca was 15. Maria worked 2 jobs to support her daughters and always told them that education was the key to a better life. Rebecca took this advice to heart and worked hard to become a nurse. Emma Martinez was 25 years old and worked as a teacher at the local elementary school. The 2 sisters were best friends and talked on the phone every day. Emma looked up to Rebecca and often asked for advice about work and relationships. They had Sunday dinner together at their mother's house every week without fail. Rebecca also had a best friend named Kelly Walsh. Kelly worked at the town library and had known Rebecca since high school. They met every Friday night for coffee at the small cafe downtown. Kelly was the kind of friend who would drop everything to help Rebecca when she needed it. For years, Rebecca had focused on her career and taking care of others. She went on a few dates but never found anyone special. Her mother often worried that Rebecca was too focused on work and not enough on finding love. Rebecca would laugh and tell her mother that the right person would come along when the time was right. 2 years ago, that time seemed to arrive. Rebecca was working at a charity event for the Children's Hospital. The event was held at the fancy Riverside Country Club to raise money for new medical equipment. Rebecca was helping to serve dinner when she noticed a tall, handsome man in an expensive suit watching her. The man walked over and introduced himself as David Thompson. He was 31 years old with dark hair and bright blue eyes. David told Rebecca he was a real estate developer who owned his own company. He said he had donated money to the hospital because he believed in helping children. David was charming and funny. He made Rebecca laugh with stories about his work and travels. He seemed genuinely interested in her job as a nurse and asked thoughtful questions about working with sick children. By the end of the evening, David had asked Rebecca for her phone number. Their first date was at the nicest restaurant in town. David arrived in a black BMW and wore a perfectly pressed shirt. He opened doors for Rebecca and treated her like a princess. During dinner, he told her about his successful real estate business. He said he bought old buildings and turned them into beautiful homes for families. David seemed too good to be true. He was successful, handsome, and kind. He sent flowers to Rebecca's work just because it was Tuesday. He remembered small details about things she had told him. When Rebecca had a bad day at work, David would show up with her favorite ice cream and a movie to watch together. The relationship moved quickly. Within 3 months, David was spending most nights at Rebecca's apartment. He helped her cook dinner and listened to her talk about her patients. He even came to the hospital Christmas party and charmed all of Rebecca's co-workers. David told Rebecca about his childhood in Boston. He said his parents had died in a car accident when he was young, and he had no brothers or sisters. This made Rebecca feel even closer to him because she understood what it was like to lose a father at a young age. 6 months into their relationship, David surprised Rebecca with a weekend trip to New York City. They stayed at an expensive hotel and saw a Broadway show. On Saturday night, David took Rebecca to dinner at a restaurant on the top floor of a tall building. The city lights sparkled below them like stars. After dessert, David got down on one knee and pulled out a beautiful diamond ring. He asked Rebecca to marry him and told her she was the love of his life. Rebecca was so surprised and happy that she started crying. She said yes immediately and called Emma and her mother from the restaurant. The engagement party was held at David's house, a large colonial home on the edge of town. Rebecca had never seen such a beautiful house. David had decorated it with expensive furniture and art. He told Rebecca that after they got married, she could redecorate however she wanted. All of Rebecca's friends and family came to the engagement party. David was the perfect host, making sure everyone had food and drinks. He told funny stories and made everyone feel welcome. Even Emma, who was usually shy around new people, seemed to really like David. Maria Martinez was impressed by David's success and how well he treated her daughter. She pulled Rebecca aside during the party and told her she had never seen Rebecca so happy. Maria said David seemed like the kind of man who would take good care of Rebecca. Kelly Walsh was also happy for her best friend. She could see how much Rebecca loved David and how he made her feel special. Kelly had worried that Rebecca would never find someone because she was so focused on work and helping others. The wedding was planned for June at the historic Riverside Manor. Rebecca had dreamed of getting married there since she was a little girl. David said money was no object and told Rebecca to plan the wedding of her dreams. They sent out invitations to 150 guests and hired the best caterer in town. Emma was going to be the maid of honor, and Kelly would be a bridesmaid. David's best man was his business partner, Michael Chen, who seemed like a nice man, but was quieter than David. The wedding dress had been ordered from a boutique in the city and cost more than Rebecca made in 2 months. Everything seemed perfect. Rebecca had found her Prince Charming and was about to live happily ever after. She had no idea that the man she loved was hiding a terrible secret that would soon destroy everything she believed about their perfect life together. In just a few weeks, Rebecca's fairy tale would turn into a nightmare that would end in tragedy. 3 weeks before the wedding, Rebecca Martinez woke up feeling excited about her upcoming marriage to David Thompson. The invitations had been sent out, the flowers were ordered, and her beautiful wedding dress hung in the closet waiting for the big day. But something was about to happen that would change everything. It started on a Tuesday morning when Rebecca was getting ready for work. David's phone rang while he was in the shower. Without thinking, Rebecca glanced at the screen and saw a name she had never heard before. The caller was someone named Robert Martinez, which was strange because Rebecca thought she knew all of David's business contacts. When David came out of the bathroom, Rebecca mentioned the phone call. David's face changed completely. For just a moment, he looked scared and angry. Then he quickly smiled and said it was probably a wrong number. He grabbed his phone and deleted the missed call right in front of Rebecca. This small moment stuck in Rebecca's mind all day at work. Why would David delete a missed call if it was just a wrong number? Why did he look so worried when she mentioned the name Robert Martinez? She tried to push these thoughts away, but they kept coming back. That evening, David said he had to work late at the office. This was becoming more common in recent weeks. Rebecca decided to surprise him with dinner from his favorite restaurant. She drove to his office building downtown and parked in front of the glass doors. Inside, she found Michael Chen, David's business partner, working alone at his desk. Michael seemed surprised to see Rebecca and asked what she was doing there. When Rebecca said she was looking for David, Michael looked confused. Michael told Rebecca that David had left the office around 3 in the afternoon. He said David had been leaving early a lot lately and seemed distracted during meetings. Michael also mentioned that some clients had been calling about projects that David claimed to be working on, but Michael had never heard of these projects. Rebecca felt her stomach drop. David had lied to her about working late, but where was he if not at the office? She thanked Michael and drove home, her mind racing with questions. When David came home 2 hours later, she asked him about work. He told her detailed stories about the meetings he had supposedly attended that day. The next few days were filled with more strange incidents. David would step outside to take phone calls, claiming they were business calls that were too boring for Rebecca to hear. He started keeping his phone face down on tables and would quickly grab it whenever it buzzed with a message. Rebecca also noticed that David was becoming more secretive about money. He had always been generous with expensive dinners and gifts, but now he seemed worried about spending. When Rebecca suggested they book their honeymoon trip to Hawaii, David said they should wait until after some big business deals came through. Emma Martinez noticed changes in her sister during their weekly Sunday dinner at their mother's house. Rebecca seemed distracted and kept checking her phone. When Emma asked if everything was okay, Rebecca said she was just stressed about wedding planning. But Emma could tell something was wrong. Rebecca had always been an open book, sharing every detail of her life with her younger sister. Now Rebecca seemed to be holding something back. Emma decided to pay more attention to what was going on with Rebecca and David. The following week, Rebecca's best friend Kelly Walsh noticed similar changes during their Friday night coffee date. Rebecca kept asking strange questions about relationships and trust. She wanted to know if Kelly thought it was normal for engaged couples to keep secrets from each other. Kelly had known Rebecca since high school and could tell when her friend was worried about something. She asked Rebecca directly if David was hiding something from her. Rebecca quickly said no, but Kelly could see doubt in her eyes. Kelly suggested that Rebecca talk to David about whatever was bothering her. She said that good relationships were built on trust and communication. Rebecca nodded and said she would think about it, but Kelly could tell she was scared to have that conversation. Meanwhile, Emma Martinez was doing some detective work of her own. Something about David had always seemed too perfect, and now with Rebecca acting strange, Emma decided to look into David's background more carefully. Emma started by searching for David Thompson on social media and the internet. She found very little information about him before he moved to Millfield 2 years ago. His business website looked professional, but when Emma called some of the phone numbers listed for references, several were disconnected. Emma also tried to find information about David's childhood in Boston. He had told Rebecca that his parents died in a car accident, but Emma could not find any news articles or obituaries that matched David's story. This seemed very strange for such a tragic event. The more Emma searched, the more questions she had. Why was there so little information about David's past? Why were some of his business references fake? Where was David really going when he told Rebecca he was working late? Emma wanted to share her concerns with Rebecca, but she knew her sister was happy and excited about the wedding. Emma decided to keep investigating quietly until she had more concrete information. One evening, Rebecca decided to surprise David by cooking his favorite meal. She went to the grocery store and bought everything she needed. When she got home, David was not there, but his car was in the driveway. She called his name but got no answer. Rebecca walked around the house looking for David. She finally found him in his home office, talking quietly on a phone she had never seen before. He was facing away from the door and did not notice her standing there. She could only hear parts of the conversation, but what she heard made her blood run cold. David was saying something about money and keeping quiet. He mentioned Rebecca's name and said something about the wedding being soon. He sounded desperate and scared, nothing like the confident man Rebecca thought she knew. When David turned around and saw Rebecca standing in the doorway, his face went white. He quickly ended the phone call and hid the phone in his desk drawer. He asked Rebecca how long she had been standing there, and she could hear worry in his voice. Rebecca felt like she was looking at a stranger. Who was this man she was supposed to marry in just 2 weeks? What secrets was he hiding from her? And most importantly, what had she gotten herself into? That night, Rebecca lay awake in bed next to David, wondering if she really knew the man she was about to spend the rest of her life with. The next morning, Rebecca Martinez could not stop thinking about the strange phone call she had overheard David making. She kept replaying his words in her mind, trying to make sense of what she had heard. David had sounded scared and desperate, talking about money and keeping secrets. This was not the confident, successful man she thought she was going to marry. At work that day, Rebecca found it hard to focus on her patients. Nurse supervisor Linda Johnson noticed that Rebecca seemed distracted and asked if everything was okay. Rebecca forced a smile and said she was just nervous about the wedding. But Linda could tell something was bothering her friend. During her lunch break, Rebecca called her sister Emma. She told Emma about the mysterious phone call and how David had been acting strange lately. Emma listened carefully and then told Rebecca about her own concerns. She explained how she had been trying to research David's background and could not find much information about his past. Emma told Rebecca that she had found several things that did not make sense. David's business references were fake. There. were no records of his parents' death in Boston, and his whole life story seemed to have started when he moved to Millfield 2 years ago. Emma said it was like David Thompson had appeared out of nowhere. Rebecca felt sick to her stomach. She had been so in love with David that she had never questioned his stories about his past. Now she realized that she might not know anything true about the man she was supposed to marry in less than 2 weeks. That evening, Rebecca decided she needed to find out the truth. David had gone to meet with a client, or at least that was what he told her. Rebecca knew this was her chance to look for answers. She remembered seeing David hide that second phone in his desk drawer. Rebecca went to David's home office and opened the desk drawer. Her hands were shaking as she pulled out the phone she had seen him hide. The phone was different from David's regular phone and looked older. When she turned it on, she saw dozens of text messages from unknown numbers. Rebecca's heart was beating fast as she started reading the messages. What she found made her feel like her whole world was falling apart. The messages were about money, threats, and something called the California job. One message mentioned federal authorities, and another talked about someone named Daniel Torres. The most shocking message was from someone named Robert Martinez, the same name that had called David's phone a few days earlier. Robert was demanding money and threatening to expose David's real identity. The message said that Robert knew about David's engagement to Rebecca and would tell her everything if David did not pay him $50,000. Rebecca kept reading, and each message made things worse. She learned that David Thompson was not his real name. His real name was Daniel Torres, and he was wanted by the FBI for stealing money from investors in California. He had run away from California 2 years ago and had been living under a fake name ever since. The messages also revealed David's horrible plan for their marriage. He was not marrying Rebecca because he loved her. He was marrying her to steal her money and then disappear before the police could catch him. Rebecca saw messages where David talked about draining her bank accounts and using their joint wedding fund to run away to Mexico. Rebecca felt like she could not breathe. Everything about their relationship was a lie. David did not love her. He was a criminal who had been using her from the very beginning. All the romantic dinners, expensive gifts, and sweet words had been part of his plan to steal her money and destroy her life. Rebecca sat in David's office chair, holding the phone and crying. She thought about all the times David had seemed too good to be true. Now she knew why. He was not real. David Thompson was just a character that Daniel Torres had created to fool her. She also realized how much danger she was in. If David was willing to steal money and live under a fake name, what else was he capable of doing? What would happen when she confronted him about what she had discovered? Would he hurt her to protect his secrets? Rebecca quickly took pictures of the most important messages with her own phone. She wanted to have proof of what she had found. Then she carefully put David's secret phone back in the desk drawer exactly where she had found it. Rebecca called Emma and told her to come over right away. When Emma arrived, Rebecca showed her the pictures of the text messages. Emma was shocked and angry. She could not believe that someone could be so cruel to her sister. Emma wanted to call the police immediately, but Rebecca said she needed to confront David first. She wanted to hear his explanation and give him a chance to tell the truth. Emma thought this was dangerous, but Rebecca said she needed to know if any part of their relationship had been real. The two sisters spent hours talking about what to do next. Emma begged Rebecca not to confront David alone, but Rebecca said she had to do this. She said she would be careful and would text Emma every few hours to let her know she was safe. That night, Rebecca waited for David to come home. She had printed out copies of some of the text messages and put them in an envelope. Her hands were still shaking, but she knew she had to be strong. She was about to confront the man she loved and discover that he was actually a dangerous criminal who had been lying to her about everything. When David's car pulled into the driveway, Rebecca took a deep breath and prepared for the most difficult conversation of her life. She had no idea that this confrontation would be her last night alive. David Thompson walked through the front door of his house at 8:30 that evening, just like any other night. He called out to Rebecca and said he was sorry for being late. His voice sounded normal and happy, like the loving fiancée Rebecca. had thought she knew for the past 2 years. Rebecca was sitting at the kitchen table with the envelope of printed text messages in front of her. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought David might be able to hear it. She had been practicing what she would say, but now that he was here, she felt scared and confused. David walked into the kitchen and smiled at Rebecca. He leaned down to kiss her on the forehead, just like he did every evening when he came home. For a moment, Rebecca almost forgot about the terrible things she had discovered. He seemed so normal, so loving. How could this man be a criminal who was planning to destroy her life? Rebecca took a deep breath and pushed the envelope across the table toward David. She told him they needed to talk about something very important. David looked at the envelope and then at Rebecca's serious face. She could see his expression change from confusion to worry. David sat down across from Rebecca and asked what was wrong. His voice still sounded calm, but Rebecca could see tension in his eyes. She told him to open the envelope and read what was inside. David's hands were steady as he pulled out the printed text messages, but Rebecca watched his face go white as he read them. He looked through each page slowly, and Rebecca could see him thinking about what to say. Finally, he looked up at Rebecca with tears in his eyes. David started crying and said he could explain everything. He told Rebecca that he had made some mistakes in his past, but he had changed because of his love for her. He said the messages were from people who were trying to blackmail him about old business deals that had gone wrong. Rebecca listened to David's explanation, but she knew he was still lying. She had read the messages carefully, and they clearly showed that David Thompson was not his real name and that he was wanted by the FBI. She told David that she knew his real name was Daniel Torres, and that he was a criminal. When Rebecca said his real name, David stopped crying immediately. His whole personality changed in an instant. The loving, gentle man Rebecca had known disappeared, and she found herself looking at someone cold and angry. David's eyes became hard and his voice turned mean. David told Rebecca that she did not understand how complicated his situation was. He said he had been trying to protect her by keeping his past a secret. He claimed that he really did love her, and that everything would be okay if she would just trust him and not ask any more questions. Rebecca told David that she could not marry someone who had been lying to her about everything. She said she knew about his plan to steal her money and run away to Mexico. She demanded that David tell her the truth about everything or she would call the police. This made David very angry. He stood up from the table and started pacing around the kitchen. He told Rebecca that she was being stupid and that she did not know what she was talking about. He said if she called the police, she would ruin both of their lives. Rebecca stood up too and told David that he had already ruined her life by lying to her. She said she had trusted him completely, and he had used that trust to plan to steal from her. She told him that their engagement was over, and that she wanted him to leave her house immediately. David grabbed Rebecca by the shoulders and shook her. He told her that she could not break up with him because he needed her. He said he was in serious trouble with dangerous people, and that marrying her was the only way he could get the money to solve his problems. Rebecca pulled away from David and told him not to touch her. She said she was going to call her sister Emma and then the police. She reached for her phone, but David grabbed it away from her. He said she was not calling anyone until they figured out a solution to this problem. The argument continued for hours. David kept changing his story, sometimes crying and begging Rebecca to forgive him and other times getting angry and threatening her. Rebecca learned that David owed money to very dangerous people from his criminal activities in California. He had been planning to use her savings and their wedding fund to pay these debts and then disappear. Around 11 o'clock, Rebecca managed to send one last text message to Emma while David was in the bathroom. The message said that David was not who they thought he was and that she was scared. She told Emma that if something happened to her, Emma should look at David's secret phone. Emma received the message and immediately tried to call Rebecca back, but Rebecca's phone went straight to voicemail. Emma tried calling several more times, but she could not reach her sister. She was very worried and considered driving over to David's house, but it was late, and she thought maybe Rebecca and David were just having a private conversation about their problems. Back at David's house, the argument was getting worse. David told Rebecca that she had to marry him as planned and help him get the money he needed. He said if she did not help him, the dangerous people he owed money to would hurt both of them. Rebecca told David that she would never help him steal money or hurt other people. She said she was going to expose his crimes no matter what happened to her. This made David completely lose control of his temper. David grabbed Rebecca again and told her that she was going to destroy everything. He said he had worked too hard to build his new life and he would not let her ruin it. Rebecca tried to get away from him, but David was much stronger than she was. The neighbors in the houses on both sides of David's home later told police that they heard shouting and the sound of things being knocked over. The argument seemed to go on for hours, with periods of quiet followed by more shouting. Around 2 a.m, everything became silent. One neighbor said she thought about calling the police when she heard what sounded like someone screaming, but she decided it was not her business to get involved in other people's relationship problems. She would later regret this decision for the rest of her life. By 3 a.m, David's house was completely quiet. Rebecca Martinez, the kind and caring nurse who had dedicated her life to helping sick children, was dead. The next morning, Rebecca Martinez did not show up for her shift at Millfield General Hospital. This was very unusual because Rebecca had never missed work without calling in advance. Her supervisor, Linda Johnson, tried calling Rebecca's phone several times but only got voicemail messages. By 10 a.m, Linda was very worried. She knew that Rebecca was getting married in just over a week and thought maybe there was a wedding emergency. Linda decided to call Rebecca's emergency contact, which was her sister Emma Martinez. Emma had not slept well the night before because of Rebecca's scary text message. When Linda called and said Rebecca had not come to work, Emma's worry turned into panic. She immediately called Rebecca's phone, but like Linda, she only got voicemail. Emma decided to drive to David's house to check on her sister. She had a bad feeling about Rebecca's text message from the night before, and now Rebecca was missing from work. Emma called her mother, Maria Martinez, on the way and told her what was happening. When Emma arrived at David's house, she noticed that Rebecca's car was not in the driveway. She knocked on the front door several times, but no one answered. Emma walked around the house and looked through the windows, but she could not see anyone inside. Emma found that the back door was unlocked, which was strange because David was usually very careful about locking up his house. She called out for Rebecca and David as she walked through the house, but no one answered. In the living room, Emma immediately saw signs that something terrible had happened. Furniture was turned over. There were broken pieces of a lamp on the floor, and she could see dark stains on the carpet that looked like they might be blood. Emma called 911 immediately and told the dispatcher that she thought something bad had happened to her sister. She gave the dispatcher David's address and said she had found evidence of a fight inside the house. The dispatcher told Emma not to touch anything and to wait outside for the police to arrive. Detective Sarah Johnson was the first police officer to arrive at David's house. She had been working for the Millfield Police Department for 15 years and had seen many crime scenes, but she could tell immediately that this was a serious case. Detective Johnson carefully walked through the house with Emma and documented everything she saw. In addition to the overturned furniture and broken lamp, she found more bloodstains in the kitchen and what looked like scratch marks on the walls. It was clear that a violent struggle had taken place. Emma showed Detective Johnson the text message she had received from Rebecca the night before. The message about David not being who they thought he was, and telling Emma to look at David's phone if something happened to Rebecca, was very important evidence. Detective Johnson asked Emma to tell her everything she knew about David Thompson. Emma explained about her research into David's background and how she had found many things that did not make sense. She told the detective about the fake business references and the missing information about David's past. The detective immediately put out a missing persons alert for Rebecca Martinez and a be on the lookout alert for David Thompson. She also called for the crime scene investigation team to come and collect evidence from the house. While they were waiting for the crime scene team, Detective Johnson found David's home office and the desk drawer that Emma had told her about. Inside the drawer was the secret phone that Rebecca had discovered. The phone contained dozens of text messages that revealed David's true identity and criminal background. Detective Johnson was shocked by what she read in the text messages. David Thompson was actually Daniel Torres, a man wanted by the FBI for investment fraud in California. The messages showed that he had been planning to steal money from Rebecca and disappear after their wedding. The detective immediately called the FBI office in Hartford, Connecticut, and spoke with Agent Robert Williams. Agent Williams confirmed that Daniel Torres was wanted for defrauding investors out of more than $2 million. He had disappeared from California 2 years earlier, and the FBI had been looking for him ever since. Agent Williams and several other FBI agents arrived in Millfield that afternoon to join the investigation. They brought with them a complete file on Daniel Torres and his criminal activities. The file showed that Torres had a history of targeting women who had access to money and using fake identities to gain their trust. The investigation team learned that Torres had used the same method to defraud at least 6 other women in different states over the past 5 years. In each case, he had created a false identity, wooed a successful woman, and then disappeared with her money. Rebecca was supposed to be his biggest score yet. Meanwhile, the crime scene investigators found more disturbing evidence in David's house. In addition to the bloodstains, they found Rebecca's purse and car keys, which meant she had not left the house voluntarily. They also found evidence that someone had tried to clean up blood from several areas of the house. The most important discovery came when investigators found David's regular car parked in the garage. The car contained plastic sheets, cleaning supplies, and a shovel. There was also more blood evidence in the trunk of the car. It was clear that David had used this car to move Rebecca's body after killing her. Detective Johnson and the FBI agents worked together to track David's movements after the murder. They found that he had withdrawn large amounts of cash from several ATMs around town in the early morning hours after Rebecca disappeared. Security cameras at the ATMs showed a man matching David's description, but he was wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses to hide his face. The investigation team also discovered that David had been preparing to run away even before Rebecca found out about his true identity. He had been slowly moving money out of their joint accounts and had already purchased a fake passport under another assumed name. By the end of the first day of investigation, it was clear that Rebecca Martinez had been murdered by Daniel Torres, also known as David Thompson. The evidence showed that he had killed her to prevent her from exposing his crimes, and then had disappeared with the money he had stolen from her. Detective Johnson held a press conference that evening to ask for the public's help in finding Daniel Torres. She showed his photograph and warned people that he was dangerous and should not be approached. The case quickly became national news because of the shocking nature of Torres's deception and the timing so close to their planned wedding. Rebecca's family and friends were devastated by the news. Her mother, Maria, could not believe that the man she had welcomed into their family was actually a murderer who had killed her daughter. Emma blamed herself for not acting sooner on her suspicions about David's background. The search for Daniel Torres had begun, but he had a several-hour head start and could be anywhere in the country by now. Detective Johnson and the FBI agents knew they had to work fast to catch him before he could disappear completely and assume yet another false identity. The manhunt for Daniel Torres, who had been living as David Thompson, became one of the biggest criminal investigations in Connecticut's history. FBI agents, police officers from multiple states, and federal marshals all worked together to find the man who had murdered Rebecca Martinez. The investigation team used every tool available to track Torres down. They monitored his credit cards, checked bus and train stations, and contacted airports across the country. They also released his photograph to news stations and put his face on wanted posters in every state. For 3 weeks, Torres managed to stay hidden while law enforcement agencies searched for him. He had been very careful about covering his tracks and had clearly planned his escape route in advance. The FBI believed he was trying to get to Mexico, where he could disappear completely and start a new life under another false identity. The breakthrough came when a sharp-eyed Border Patrol agent named Carlos Mendez was working at a checkpoint near the Mexican border in Texas. A man with dark hair and sunglasses tried to cross the border using fake identification papers. Agent Mendez noticed that the man seemed nervous and was sweating even though it was not very hot that day. When Agent Mendez asked the man some basic questions about his identification, the man's answers did not match the information on his fake passport. Agent Mendez became suspicious and asked the man to step aside for additional questioning. Under closer examination, Agent Mendez realized that the nervous man trying to cross the border looked very similar to the photographs of Daniel Torres that had been circulated to all law enforcement agencies. Agent Mendez immediately called for backup and detained the man for further investigation. Within hours, FBI agents arrived at the border checkpoint and confirmed that the man in custody was indeed Daniel Torres. When they arrested him, Torres was carrying multiple fake identification cards, over $30,000 in cash, and a detailed plan for starting a new life in Mexico. Torres was transported back to Connecticut to face charges for the murder of Rebecca Martinez. During the trip, he remained mostly silent and refused to talk to investigators without a lawyer present. However, his capture brought some relief to Rebecca's family and friends, who had been living in fear that he might never be caught. The trial of Daniel Torres began 6 months later and attracted national media attention. The prosecutor, District Attorney Jennifer Walsh, presented a strong case against Torres that included the physical evidence found at his house, the incriminating text messages on his secret phone, and testimony from the many people Torres had deceived. Emma Martinez testified about her sister's final text message and the investigation she had done into Torres's background. She told the jury about how much Rebecca had loved the man she thought was David Thompson, and how excited she had been about their wedding. Rebecca's mother, Maria Martinez, gave emotional testimony about losing her daughter to a man who had pretended to love her. Maria told the jury that Rebecca had always been a kind and trusting person who wanted to help others, and Torres had used those good qualities against her. Rebecca's best friend, Kelly Walsh, testified about the changes she had noticed in Rebecca during the weeks before her death. Kelly said Rebecca had seemed worried and had asked strange questions about trust in relationships, but Kelly never imagined that Rebecca was in deadly danger. The prosecution also brought in FBI agent Robert Williams to testify about Torres's long history of defrauding women across multiple states. Agent Williams explained how Torres would create false identities, target successful women with money, and then disappear after stealing from them. Rebecca was supposed to be his biggest theft yet. Torres's defense lawyer, Michael Roberts, tried to argue that Rebecca's death was not planned and had happened during a heated argument that got out of control. Roberts claimed that Torres had not intended to kill Rebecca and had panicked when she threatened to call the police. However, the prosecution was able to prove that Torres had been planning to disappear with Rebecca's money long before she discovered his true identity. The evidence showed that he had been preparing his escape route and had already started stealing money from their joint accounts. The medical examiner, Dr. Patricia Coleman, testified that Rebecca had died from severe head injuries caused by being hit multiple times with a heavy object. Dr. Coleman said the injuries were consistent with a deliberate and sustained attack, not an accident that happened during an argument. After hearing all the evidence, the jury took only 4 hours to find Daniel Torres guilty of first-degree murder. They also found him guilty of identity fraud, investment fraud, and multiple other charges related to his criminal activities across several states. During the sentencing phase of the trial, Rebecca's family was allowed to give victim impact statements. Emma Martinez told the court about how much she missed her sister and how Rebecca's death had destroyed their family. She said Rebecca had dedicated her life to helping sick children and had deserved to live a long and happy life. Maria Martinez spoke about losing her oldest daughter to a man who had never really loved her. She said Torres had not only killed Rebecca, but had also killed the trust and happiness of everyone who had loved Rebecca. The judge, Honorable William Davis, sentenced Daniel Torres to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Judge Davis said that Torres had shown a complete lack of respect for human life and had used his charm and intelligence to hurt innocent people. Torres was also sentenced to additional years in prison for his fraud crimes in California and other states. He will spend the rest of his life in prison and will never again be able to hurt another innocent woman. The case led to changes in how background checks are done for marriage licenses in Connecticut. The state now requires more thorough verification of identity documents to prevent criminals from using fake names to deceive their victims. Rebecca's story has been featured in documentaries and true crime shows as a warning about romance fraud. and the dangers of trusting people without verifying their backgrounds. Her case has helped other women recognize warning signs of deceptive partners and has saved lives. Emma Martinez became an advocate for victims of domestic violence and fraud. She speaks at conferences and support groups about the importance of trusting your instincts when something seems wrong in a relationship. Emma says that Rebecca's death was not in vain if it helps protect other women from similar predators. The children's ward at Millfield General Hospital was renamed the Rebecca Martinez Children's Wing in honor of her dedication to helping young patients. A scholarship fund was also established in Rebecca's name to help nursing students who want to work with children. Rebecca Martinez is remembered as a kind, caring woman who gave her life to helping others. Her family and friends will never forget her bright smile and generous heart. Although her life was cut short by an evil man who never deserved her love, Rebecca's memory continues to inspire others to live with kindness and compassion. Daniel Torres will spend the rest of his life in prison, where he can never again deceive and hurt innocent people. Justice was served for Rebecca Martinez, but nothing can bring back the wonderful woman whose only crime was trusting someone who did not deserve her trust.